This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Grant Johnson, your voice actor. We're going to talk about telling stories the right way, and we're going to the heart of your story and what you do. But before we get to that, I always ask any guest on the show a couple questions. What motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
What a loaded question right off the bat. Why do I do what I do? I guess one of the things that I've always enjoyed about acting in all capacities is just that it's fun. It's fun, but also it really ties into sort of that human element of everything. We're all human, and what does that mean? Uh, Really, it just means that we've all got different things going on. We're all have different experiences, different strengths, weaknesses, flaws, all of those kind of things. And, when you get to act, it's an opportunity to really dive into all of those different facets
Human
and
experience. Yeah,
yeah.
it's just like as a writer, it's like
Mhm.
I'm a creative person, and I talk to a lot of creative people
Mhm.
on the podcast, and what I've always found is like I love talking to creators because they're all trying to tell that human story.
Right.
Like no matter if you're a painter, you're an actor, you're a filmmaker, you're a writer, songwriter, or author,
Mhm. Yeah.
like everybody's trying to tell that human story in a different way. And
Yep.
I just love that because I think that's the arts to me are like that's why I get up, even though I have a day gig. I get up for the arts because that's what motivates me the most.
Mhm. It fills up your cup. It's
Yeah.
it's a good thing to do.
Yeah, the muse. The muse is like, I'm always into the Victorians, William Blake and
Oh, sure.
Looking Glass Self and all that stuff. But I find it's like it's good to look back
Mhm.
and then be in the present and then look forward.
Sure. No doubt.
So how did you get into voiceover acting? Like had you done other types of acting and then you found this was your niche?
I always kind of come back to this story about watching Mrs. Doubtfire back when I was just a little
Oh,
tiny tyke,
Robert
and
Williams, yeah.
yeah, it was such an eye-opening experience. Just even getting to see how the sausage is made. Most people typically don't like that part of the process because it's like, oh, I wanna be in the illusion, but
Yeah.
actually getting to see kind of it's the microphone and the script, and in some cases you've also got the source material where you've got some sort of visual cue where you got to try to make everything line up, and other times it's just you're basically allowed to be you, like what he did in Aladdin. He just
Hmm.
riffed and went off the cuff, and then poor animators had to try to figure out, how do I turn this into something that I can show kids.
Yeah. How can I bring that back into this space?
Yeah.
But
But
I think it's the kind of flow state artist
mhm,
when you get a guy, like a Miles Davis, a Coltrane, right?
mhm,
The whole thing was that type of jazz, and you got into like modal jazz,
mhm.
you got into fusion jazz. It's like you can have a structure, but you
Right.
can go off. You
Mhm.
could go into dissonance, you could go into different things, you could go off the page, right? You don't have
Yep.
to go note for note.
Mhm. Yeah.
You
Well,
might
that's
still have structure, but you don't have to go note for note all the time.
right. Yeah, that's the nice thing about the arts, is that when when it comes to sort of the pedagogy, or just sort of the education behind learning how everything works, you set that good strong foundation so that where the box is, and then find creative ways to
Break out of it.
break out of it every once in a while.
Yeah. It's just interesting, like the imagination that goes into when you're doing like a voiceover.
Hmm.
Cause, I love, I like listening to like, old radio programs
Right.
and the imagination that took it. Like I grew up listening to like comedy records on vinyl.
Hmm.
I'm a child of the
Yeah.
70s. And so my dad had all these comedy records. And, he had some of the classic Bill Cosby records.
Hmm.
And I was like, wow, like how you could get brought into the story. And we had the TV, but sometimes we turn off the TV and just listen to that.
Right.
And it was like something about just being in a room on the couch listening to the voice actor, and then it lets your imagination, like reading a book.
Yeah. Yeah, the theater of the mind, it's a cool thing. This is kind of my favorite sort of prop when it comes to, sort of the Foley side of acting, at least with, specifically either voice acting or, anything that would use that, because you get this crunchy little bag of cornstarch, and I don't know how well that's picking up.
Yeah, it's picking up.
But that's Foley artists use that for snow.
Yeah.
Walking through snow. It's like, yeah, it's got the same quality, that nice soft snow that got that
all the
crunch.
special effects you used to have in radio,
Yeah.
they'd live radio programming.
Yeah.
They'd have to have, the sound guys there. And I'm into sound engineering. I love analog synthesizers and oscillators, and like starting with a wave, some with noise, and creating something, like making something sound like an ocean wave, make it sound like the wind, and do it like not from a tape of the wind, but actually create your own wind.
Yeah.
Create your own ocean.
I've tried that a few times with, different sine waves or sawtooths or, those kind of things. And
yeah,
it's weird how much you can do with those things with, just a basic workstation. And I don't even use like the oscillators or any of that kind of stuff. I just have my DAW. So I just
the DAW can do the same
throw
things.
it in there. And well, in mine, I don't know how to use that. I don't know if Audacity has that capability, but
yeah, it's interesting because, I'm an analog guy. I like tons of I have Moogs and modulars, and it's just the idea of like sound painting, which I think you can probably understand.
Yeah.
Because it was kind of a term. Hendrix talked about it. People asked him about Electric Lady. If you ever listen to Electric Ladyland, you hear all these like cosmic noises. You hear wind, you hear birds. He's doing that with the guitar.
Sure.
He's not using a synth. So he's like kind of one of the first progressive artists. He's like taking the guitar to do synth type things and do atmospheric type of recordings.
Yeah, Peter Frampton did some of that kind of stuff too, right?
Yeah. There's a bunch of guys who were in that zone that started realizing what you could do with the effect pedals and what you could do with the guitar, different tunings, and using the studio as an instrument, if you think about the Beatles and their producer, and the fact that they would go in there and they just George Martin. He started to say, hey, we could be like Monet. We don't have to play it like Hamburg,
right?
Where we do it, what we can physically do on stage. We can actually make the studio be an instrument.
Sure.
And then, I wonder, like when you're playing with your voice as a voice actor, and everybody knows like you can channel different things. Your voice is an instrument, as a musician knows. So how do you like approach that?
Ooh, that's a good question. I tend to kind of play off of sort of, again, kind of going off of what people have done in the past, looking at it's very hard to not fall into a lot of these kind of stereotypical tropes, but they are a nice starting point. And they're also a good way to, again, we were talking about getting outside of the box when you think about different roles. One kind of, I think, well-known role, if you look at like sort of Disney movies, Disney animation, for the movie Hercules, they hired James Woods to play Hades, and all of the people, they see Hades, Lord of Death and Darkness or whatever. They're like, oh, I'm going to come in here and have this really deep kind of brooding voice. And then he's like, hey, how you doing? I don't know.
Yeah, he changed the whole motif.
Yeah.
It's like you can approach it and it's like, I'm going to radically shift it. I'm not going to do what's expected.
Yeah. So I think the cool thing with voice acting is it's a lot of that. You're given, 2 or 3 takes sometimes, depending on the, audition and, who's casting it. And you kind of have to decide, okay, what do I see with this character based off of just what's written on the page here? And it's a good opportunity for you to, play with it, decide, do I want it to fall into this sort of stereotypes where if it's a bigger person, maybe they've got a deeper voice or, the same kind of thing with like if they are a smoker or if they're, old, young, all of those kind of things.
Stereotypical stuff. You don't want to, you want to probably don't want to, it's probably like a happy medium. You got to know the director, know the writer, know the piece you're in, maybe have an idea what their tolerance is.
And another kind of interesting thing is that recently we've got kind of this, more people are looking to do sort of grounded, authentic sort of performances. So for commercials, that means having these conversational reads that it sounds like you're just talking to a neighbor or a friend.
Oh, like you're like
And
somebody on a podcast. You're just a regular
yep,
person.
yeah,
You're
telling
not the
tell,
professional actor.
telling somebody about the meal that you had a week ago where something crazy happened, and you basically have to go straight from that mindset straight into, and now I'm telling you about cars or insurance or anything else.
Yeah, because you're doing commercial work where you're doing
Mhm.
commercials.
Yeah.
Like you're doing like Madison Avenue type stuff too, right?
Mhm. Yeah, commercials they're kind of the bread and butter for a lot of voice actors when it comes to the actual, making money side of it, because there's way more commercials
Is
than
that
there
like the day
are.
gig is the commercial? Is that
Yep.
the typical gig is the commercial and then maybe the TV or the cartoon
Yep.
or the documentary?
Yep.
Like, is it like, 80/20?
I would say probably for most voice actors, 80/20 is that's the goal. If there's probably some that it's 100% of what they do.
Mhm.
But then there's some that either they find different niches, so maybe they don't have to do commercials as much. Maybe they can live off of some of the other pretty repetitive stuff, like I think what is the one category? Not trailers, but promos. Promos.
Promos.
I think
Oh,
there's
yeah.
some people that there's a few voices that they can probably get 80% of their work from promos. There's some that they can make 80% of their income off of animation or video games, because they also do going to conventions and signings, or
Yeah,
doing things on Cameo.
is are video games like the new cartoon? Because like cartoons, like being a child of the '70s
Mhm.
and Hanna-Barbera was doing a lot of cartoons, right? But
Yeah.
now you say like maybe that doesn't seem to be a lot of new cartoons coming from that direction. They
Yeah.
seem to be coming from other directions.
Yeah, traditional animation, I think there's kind of a it's kind of segmented in a bit. You've got sort of the feature films, which you've got kind of the typical players in that realm. I think Cartoon Network's kind of winding down, so some of the like kids animation stuff. You've still got, I think, Disney doing some of that. You've got Nickelodeon still,
Mhm.
but then I guess I don't really know a whole lot about who else is putting on a lot of those. Um, and
A lot of stuff
then
seems to be coming from the East, like the
yes,
anime.
animes
'Cause
a
I'm a big fan of like
mhm,
Japanese K-drama, you know,
yeah,
Chinese dramas and,
mhm,
Taiwanese animation, Japanese animation, Korean animation. And
yeah,
in that and I lived in Japan, and
mhm.
in that world, like, the adults like the anime.
Oh, sure, yeah.
They're reading manga on the train. The salarymen
Mhm.
are reading manga on the train. They're
Yep.
not just reading the paper.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so it's very prominent. There's all kinds of new properties coming out, like, all the time.
Right,
So what's interesting is, like, maybe that's kind of taken over because maybe our audience, the younger people, it's coming from that direction, and maybe there's an opportunity for the dubbing.
right.
I
Yep,
don't
there
know.
certainly is. Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of, and I think it's kind of interesting too now that with as much as things have opened up with the advent of the internet and these kind of things, it's making it a lot easier for people who do live in some of these more rural areas to put their voice into some of these projects that they otherwise wouldn't have had
Would
an
never got
opportunity
to because
to
they
in
can
the
actually
past.
have a decent studio in their home,
Yep.
and then some company overseas actually
Mhm.
comes and talks to them and is like, "Oh, yeah, we'll give you can do the work if you can get it in
Right.
at the level of quality we need, like, boom, you can
Mhm.
do it."
That's right. Yeah, exactly. But to back to your point about video games, I do think that video games there's definitely a lot of that going on. And here's kind of an interesting, uh, I would say, topical thing that just happened. I participated in a game jam, so that's where people get together for a very short amount of time. Sometimes it's a day, sometimes it's as much as like a month. But a group of people, most of the time they're people that they've never met each other before,
Mhm.
and you just get together and build a video game from scratch. And you're given like maybe a prompt, so a theme to build off of. And
Oh, wow.
the one that I was in, there were thousands of people who were involved, and I think there was at least 3,000, maybe close to 4,000 teams. And out of all those teams, there was still, I think, 1,700 that ended up submitting something to be judged.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there seems to be a lot of energy because if you look at the way the games are, a company like just a name tag, like a Rockstar,
Yeah.
making a Grand Theft Auto, that's like a movie. They're
Hmm.
taking like years to do it. They have like
Hmm.
it's being cast like a movie.
Right.
Some of these games are being cast like movies,
Hmm.
like Disney movies.
Yeah.
You're
And
like,
they're using all of the emerging technology and all of the high tech stuff, uh, using motion capture, performance capture. So some of the actors, they've even got like either the dots or something on
yeah,
their face so that they can
yeah, it looks
have
like them.
a
It
reference
actually looks
point.
like an actor. You go
Mhm.
into the video game, and it's actually like a video
Mhm.
game version of the actor.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's
So your
wild.
their mannerisms and like their acting capabilities been captured by the motion capture, and they got their
Hmm.
voice, and they've acted the whole scene out in multiple scenes
Yep.
because different directions.
Yep.
Depending on what you do, it goes this way, it goes that way, whatever. It just seems like that means there's a lot of content that needs to get created. So is there a big pipeline?
Uh, there's a lot of work. The hard part is
Getting the works?
finding it, getting your name in front of the right people. And the other difficult thing with a lot of, especially these indie projects, is that they're working on, of course, much smaller budgets.
Small
Some
budget.
of them are royalty share or basically revenue share type of deal where based off of what the video game eventually does, that's kind of
Oh, so you
your
get profit. Like
what
you
you've been
get, yeah.
promised. Yeah.
It's like when you get
And
into a startup, they might
yeah.
give you like stock instead of salary.
Which
Yeah.
some of them, it might pay out because, some of these uh indie games, I know, things like Undertale, Super Meat Boy,
Yeah.
uh
Sometimes they
you,
blow up. You
you
never
got,
know. It's like they
yeah,
can blow up. It's like you come in on the ground floor and they gave you like a
mhm,
royalty based payment based on the sales, and the sales go through the roof.
right.
But,
It could be
you
a
know,
very big payday, but on the other side, you're taking a risk there, and that's like a lot of business owners. And that's kind of a cool thing that I think is that, again, we're opening all of this stuff up to all of these people who wouldn't have these opportunities otherwise. And it's a really nice way for somebody who doesn't have a lot of that kind of business acumen and business experience to at least, dip their toe in the water and say, hey,
yeah.
is this something that I might be able to do for a living?
Yeah, it's cool to be able to be in the arts
Hmm.
and to not have the typical in the cube
Right.
job, in
Hmm.
the box.
Yeah.
And like you said, there's like to tell the story.
Hmm.
Being a voice actor, you're framing the story. You've envisioned it like any actor.
Right.
You pick up that script, you pick up the teleplay, pick up the screenplay,
Hmm.
pick up the video game script, and you interpret what you think that character needs,
Right.
right? Or how it should be portrayed.
Hmm.
And so it's like when you're looking at scripts, like, do you have like agents to send you scripts, or you're just doing it yourself?
Yeah, I do have an agency out of San Diego. It's Innovision Talent Agency, and they're relatively new. I think that they've been more or less operational for just the last year or so, as far as actually sending out auditions and things. But that's part of the game. You gotta get an agent and work with them and see what you can do for them, and hopefully you can book enough spots that they keep sending you auditions and you keep booking work, and it just builds from there.
Is there a thing where you get like known for a certain type of character? Is there a danger in getting typecast, or is it broad enough because you're a voice actor you can shift your voice to meet whatever the project is?
Yeah. I think that kind of ties in with sort of what we were talking about earlier, where everything's kind of more grounded or authentic recently. So people, there might be a chance that you're getting work because people know about you for the stuff that you've already done. So they're looking to hire you for something similar in kind of a similar vein. But that's not necessarily a bad thing.
No.
Because at the end of the day, hopefully you're representing your true authentic self, and that helps you connect with the audience a little bit more. And again, that
If it
that makes
aligns
you
to
more
your vision.
bookable.
Yeah, if it aligns to like if you're, when you're an artist and you're in alignment with your craft, right? You
Yeah.
don't feel like I was talking to a guy that was like involved in film, and he kind of got put on something he was not aligned to. It was
Mhm.
contractual.
Right.
And he wasn't very happy about it. But it's interesting. He turned it into a podcast. But
Mhm.
um, but it's interesting. Like if you can find that thing that works for you, that you
Mhm.
hit that groove, that you're on
Yeah.
the right frequency, you got the right vibe.
Mhm.
You know, then it's great. But it's like in terms of I guess the influences you have as a voice actor, like who influenced you?
Who are my influences?
Yeah.
Well, we've already talked about one, Robin Williams. All of the other ones that I watched growing up, there was Jim Carrey. He was kind of an odd duck. You've
Yeah.
got all of the sort of Muppets and Fraggles. So Jim Henson, Frank
Henson,
Oz,
yeah,
Dave
Muppets, like,
Goles, Jerry Nelson, Richard Hunt, all those guys. Uh, and then getting into the other animation kind of stuff. Uh, I'm a big fan of Jim Cummings, so he was in Princess and the Frog and Winnie the Pooh and all sorts of things. Um, and
yeah,
then
Casey
there's
Kasem for me. I remember
oh
hearing
sure,
him on like Scooby Doo and
yep,
Battle on the Planets and like anything else. So
hmm
he's doing like everything.
yeah. No, one of his coworkers, Frank Welker. He's one of the biggest voice actors in terms of just overall stuff that he's worked on. Frank Welker, yeah, he was Fred in Scooby Doo, but then he's also been uh, Apu and the Cave of Wonders in Aladdin. He
Hmm.
was Cujo in Cujo. He's done a lot of dogs, basically, a lot of monkeys, and a lot of other just random stuff. He was, I think, Megatron in the original Transformers, Dr. Claw.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
been
I know
all
all
over
that.
the place.
Yeah, I know all that stuff.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's fun. It's like what makes like an engaging story to you? Like when you get a script, what like really lights your fire? Like this is something you want to do.
Yeah. Man. What's engaging? I think, generally speaking, when it comes to character work I think is a little bit more engaging for me personally than the commercial stuff. So I do like that stuff a little bit more. As far as what in particular about either the script or the character, I think sort of seeing the some people will call it the hero's journey. I just kind of call it growth and development, but sort of a dynamic storytelling uh, path where you get to see the person go from sort of this whatever box that they're in and deciding, okay, it's time for me to grow, so what do I need to learn about the world? What's new? What's something else that I haven't experienced or haven't
Hmm.
put myself out there to.
Hero's tale, or they,
Mhm.
yeah, but it's like that. I don't know, that growth
Yeah.
mindset. Like when you have
Mhm.
somebody that's like transformative journey.
Yeah.
Like I remember growing up with the Hobbit.
Yep.
Oh, there's this little Hobbit, and he's like so powerful in
Mhm.
this kingdom of all these powerful like creatures. Is like he's able to actually do it,
Yeah.
and like wow, how could he do that? Right,
Yeah.
and being a young kid seeing that something like that, it's kind of like revolutionary in your head. It's like
Oh yeah.
it's not Captain Kirk, it's something
Mhm.
else.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of a nice little uh moral, to the story, is that it's not courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is action in spite of it.
Yeah.
And I think Bilbo and Frodo and all those guys, they do a good job of personifying that.
Yeah, growing up with that, that was always, Dungeons and Dragons,
Mhm.
imagination, being a child of the 70s, like we didn't have the video games till the 2600 came,
Sure.
right? And so it was like the Legos and the Erector sets and building our own thing, maybe Dungeons and Dragons,
Yeah.
with a bunch of kids in the basement,
Hmm.
like coming up with these worlds. And we have been reading The Hobbit, we've reading Tolkien, and we're all keyed into it, buying comic books,
Sure.
reading all this stuff, and it let our head, it's just interesting today because a lot of kids are like they're being brought into a world of like a Final Fantasy 7,
Sure.
where they're brought into this world, but they didn't actually go and create that world. Like I
Hmm.
was growing up with kids with dungeon masters, they were kind of creating these worlds, you know
Right.
and it seems like that I mean I hope kids are doing that. People that creative kids are creating the games,
Hmm.
So they are building things,
Yeah.
but just the imagination was like, what if it's not a game? Or what if you could just do that outside the game?
Yeah. That's one thing that I kind of like about sort of modern storytelling. We've got all of these different avenues for people to sort of explore their creativity, whether it is tabletop gaming, whether it's audio dramas or audio books, or even reading, physical or digital books, playing video games, watching movies. All of these things give people a different, even just going back outside and, playing with a stick and,
Yeah,
whatever, pretending it's a sword, and all
yeah,
of this
you're
stuff.
playing that stuff. Yeah, like running around with the cap guns. Like I
Yeah.
first grew up, people were playing with their little cap guns, trying to be cowboys and stuff, and he just made stuff up.
Hmm.
And it's just so many things are so guided today.
Yeah.
That I hope I see the kids like out there with their imagination just making it up.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know,
We've got a really nice thing here where I live. It's a children's museum, and it's got a lot of that sort of, wonderment, and basically telling, showing them how the world works as far as all of these crazy things, from sound to physics to, all of this kind of stuff, and just letting them play. And it's a nice way to both be learning something and also sort of uh, just letting your imagination run wild and
yeah, turn the
express
cell phone
yourself.
off, turn the iPad off.
Mhm.
Get out there and play kind of the old way. Like like
Yeah.
I said, with that like a Lego set that wasn't a theme. It was
Hmm.
just a bunch of blocks, and you had to. It didn't have it. It wasn't a themed set.
Yeah.
It was just a set with tons of parts,
Hmm.
and you just came up with you had the theme in your head.
Hmm.
But today we're so many things are guided
Yeah.
that I like the world of like unguided.
Hmm. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
in terms of voiceovers, like, are there, there's a kind of an idea whether are they the same, or they? It sounds like pretty obvious they wouldn't be the same. But
Hmm.
this idea is all voiceover the same, or is there different aspects to it? Different.
Right. Yeah. So one kind of interesting thing with getting into especially professional voiceover is you've got different verticals. So that's all the different types of media that you would be doing for work. You've got commercials, you've got trailers, promos, IVR, corporate narration, interactives, which includes video games, animation, all of these different categories. They, if you want to basically book work in each of them, you should find somebody who's been in it before to at least understand sort of the premise behind, what does a typical read sound like,
Hmm.
because a
Yeah,
typical read
yeah.
for somebody making an audiobook is not going to sound the same as a typical read for somebody doing animation. So uh, having some acting training just in general will open you up to understanding, sort of the performance aspect of it, getting specific training from different coaches who've either done it themselves or who have been like casting directors and seen a lot of auditions and know what's currently working for people and what's not. That tends to help a lot. And then also improv classes. That's another thing that, again, lets people sort of flex their creative muscle and get into a groove and kind of figure out, okay, what can I get away with, what can't I get away with, what does work, what doesn't work, what do people resonate with, what's something that they just kind of say, oh no, I don't want to see that again.
But it sounds like that comedic like talent, like stand
Right.
up or being
Yes.
part of like a comedic group.
Hmm.
There's like these famous stand-ups, and one's like I know Saturday Night Live, but there's a whole other one. It's like I know
Hmm.
what it is, but I forgot.
It's not Mad TV, is it?
Second City,
Oh, Second City. Yeah.
yeah. The idea. So is coming from that perspective a really good place to have like assets from.
Oh, absolutely. If somebody went to Second City or wherever, that, they do a lot of improv training and then decided, oh, maybe this isn't for me, but I'll try voice acting. It's certainly a possibility. I would say
straight
that's
into
that's a that's a mark in the box for rather than against, as far as,
it.
somebody that's looking at getting into voice acting.
What about like documentary, like filmmaking, like independent documentary? Like you hear, like you watch PBS. There's a lot of
Mhm.
voiceovers, but they
Sure.
tend to get fake people have certain like quality voice.
Right.
So they're looking for like somebody that has this voice that's going to
Mhm.
fit the nature documentary or fit the, historic documentaries,
Yeah.
period documentaries, and there's all kinds of
Mhm.
room for
Yeah.
these voiceovers, but maybe there's not. So that's the question: is there room in that, or there's established players and you can't really get in?
Um, I guess it kinda depends on, if you're working with a production company that makes a lot of documentaries versus, like, if you're coming in as sort of an independent filmmaker or whatnot, because that's going to sort of determine your network. I think more than anything, uh, having the right network is going to determine whether or not you're going to be able to get a lot of these very specific type of jobs.
Hmm.
Mostly because the, again, we think of these things, people have or different areas of voiceover or any kind of a role. Well, they'll have these gatekeepers, and the gatekeepers are the ones that get to decide, okay, I'm going to take a risk on this person instead of this person, and here are all of the reasons. And sometimes it's just a matter of, I know this person well enough that I'm willing to take a risk on them.
Hmm.
And if you're somebody who doesn't have all those connections already, you either have to go out and make those connections or have really good body of work. Because if your work can speak for itself, then there is no risk involved. But if you're kind of an unknown, you don't have a lot of connections, and you haven't necessarily done a lot of work, including training, it's going to be a lot harder to break
Well, a
in.
big slog for trying to, because people have budgets
Hmm.
and they don't want to risk
Yeah.
a production on like the unknown,
Yep.
fear of the unknown, because it's like it's going to cut to your bottom line. It's like, are you going to be
Mhm.
able to get it done?
Right. And it
So,
might cause delays. You might have to hire a replacement because maybe this person wasn't able to perform to your standards. There's all sorts of factors that, yeah, it makes it very difficult for some of these, especially the triple A opportunities, the things that everybody's like, oh, I
trying
see
to,
that, so I want to do that. And it's like, yeah, but you've got the mountain to climb, man.
you got to do the work. Well, it's like the 10,000 hours, like any musician,
Yes.
right? Like you come out the gate when you're 16, like what you're doing when you're
Mhm.
16, 17.
Yep.
Is not what you're doing when you're 24, 25, right? It's like
Right.
you put
Yep.
that, team, you think about like a jazz musician, they get to a certain level,
Hmm.
right? And then you're at the, weather report level.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so they can just, so if you get it, but you got to get there.
Hmm.
Nobody wants to book you when you're not there.
Right. Yeah, you've got to do the work, and like you said, it's a lot easier if you can start early and if you have kind of a vision of what you want to be doing, because at the very least you can build on a whole lot of adjacent skills, skill sets that it might not be exactly what it is that you're going into, but for voice acting there's a lot of those kind of uh, industry adjacent skills.
Like,
you know
are there like apprenticeships? Are
well,
there things
just
where you could get into and be kind of involved and kind of have somebody take you under their wing and then you kind of come up?
I'm more so speaking about specifically what makes a good performance. So you could be working in radio. There's a lot of people that work in radio that end up becoming voiceovers, and that's partially to do with the fact that they've got experience with both commercials, radio
Oh,
commercials,
because they were on the radio reading.
and a lot of reads. They know how to read a script, they know how to break down a script, they know timing, because a lot of things, especially in the commercial world, is, can you fit this into a 30-second? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know, I haven't tried it before. Well, people in radio, they've done it day in day out, especially the on-air talent, so they have that level of experience. We just talked about people with improv skills. That's something that's vastly important, and can benefit a lot of actors. There's acting training, so that's either coaching or being in acting workshops and groups, or going to school, being part of either a conservatory or a university that goes over different curriculums. Um, Beyond acting, I think music's a really big thing that actors can uh, benefit from, because when it comes to acting, there's kind of that idea of a triple
Performance.
threat.
Yeah, the
If you're
performance.
you
Yeah,
can act, you can sing, and you can dance. Well, you need to
they
know how you need to know music in order to sing. So,
well, also, it's a stage craft.
Mhm.
Musicians tend to have to be on stage.
Yep.
They got to get it done in a short form. like a song
Yep.
is kind of short form compared to a play,
Right.
right? So you get it done in like 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can actually connect to an audience, you can actually complete the song,
Right.
and you've done it how
Mm-hmm.
many times? If you're a singer, you've been on stage where you've been, whether you're in a play, whether
Mm-hmm.
you're actually singing in a coffee shop, if you've done it and
Yep.
you've done the work, then you know about the timing. Like the whole thing in
Mhm.
music is like the hook.
Yeah.
Some songs have 5 hooks. You got a hook is a so I think the idea of getting that hook and being able to do it in a concise way with your producer is like, we got to get this take done. We only got the studio
Mm-hmm.
for another week.
Right. Right.
There's still the time constraint
Mm-hmm. Yep.
to actually get the performance done so we can put it on the album.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's important to make sure that you're hitting those deadlines, and that again, you've got the chops to be able to pull that off.
Yeah, it's super important to, just have that situational awareness, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to know,
Yeah.
like you said, the improv must be really amazing because
Oh,
it's like for a lot of musicians, it's like, if I go with a group and I don't got to give them the chord chart,
yeah.
if
Mm-hmm.
I just play the song, the first like couple minutes of the song,
Yeah.
even like, they pick up on the key, I don't got to tell them. Like a lot of times, like when, they can just pick up on it. If I don't have to go and tell them, like, here's where everything is, then it's like, then I feel more comfortable. I'm probably going to pick that guy to be in the group.
Right.
you
Absolutely.
know,
Yeah.
it's the chemistry, it's the vibe.
Yep.
Like if you can vibe with the moment,
Mm-hmm.
and I think if you're an improv guy, you're probably going to be able to pick up on it real quick. It's like, okay, this is what this is,
Right.
right, and it fit in, right.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. The whole yes and concept, basically taking a concept and building off of it. Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
big.
So in terms of like what you prefer, like we talked about the 80-20,
Yeah.
and what you personally have worked on that really made you like feel like this is why you do it.
Yeah. Oh, that is a good question. So the reason why, so again, kind of going back to that whole the human element and getting to connect with people. Generally speaking, the live audience, so the live stuff that I've done has been probably the best because you get immediate feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had, it's not necessarily stuff that I've been paid for in the past because, I did it in college and I was part of the ensemble or, what have you. But all of those live, especially musicals,
Mm-hmm.
those are kind of the things that I enjoyed the most.
Yeah,
And
because you get that
that,
immediate. Because it's like what a musician loves is like when you get
oh yeah.
on stage, you're in that club, you're in that
Mm-hmm.
coliseum, wherever you are on stage, being able to get that immediate feedback. Like I talk to writers, and it's like, wow, it takes a couple weeks, it takes a couple days, it takes a couple months to know did it work.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a musician, you're like, if you're a comedian,
Yeah.
you know it worked. You're like, that joke didn't work.
Yep.
You're immediate making a correction. If you're a musician, it's like, oh, this isn't going over. Let's switch to another.
Yep. Yep. And then mental note, and then you gotta take it back to the wood shop and just keep hammering it out until something clicks, and then so this is what's funny about that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
that must be an amazing experience. But when you're with a troupe, it's like the connection. Like
Mhm.
it's like
Oh
when
yeah.
you're in a band. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I was talking to a film director. It's like when they do a scene, and the lighting guy, the guy with the storyboards, like the
Mm-hmm.
videographer, the cameraman,
Yep.
they all got to be in sync. They all
Yeah.
got to kind of like the band. They got to be in tune. It's like, oh, they're hitting it tonight, or they're not. The
Yep.
bass player's not running on 8 cylinders tonight.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little off. It's like this is not the best. But when you're actually all doing it,
Yeah.
right? And do you have that same thing? Do you have a team, or is it just you?
So for all of the live stuff that I've done, mostly it's been with some sort of ensemble, Uh, since I got into more of the voice acting side of things, there's not quite as much of that. Occasionally you might book a job that, especially if it's a character uh, deal, could be for animation, could be for some sort of an audio drama. there's a better chance that you might have a table read. And if you
Mhm.
do that, then you can kind of sort of get a feel for what everybody else is like in the group. And that's nice when you can have those kind of opportunities. But um, especially nowadays, it's very much so a lot of, you record this on your own and then you wait for the feedback. And if you get the feedback, then it's okay, I'll give another crack at it. And but you have to, for the most part, just kind of imagine it on your own and
So
say,
it's kinda
okay,
isolated. You
this
don't
is,
get to see the full picture. You're
yeah.
kinda seeing a piece of the picture,
Hmm.
and then you gotta figure out, like, "Whoa, how does that weave?"
Yep.
Compared to being, like, in an ensemble,
Yeah.
or, like, if you had a bunch of voice actors in the box,
Hmm.
and you're kinda going line by line, interacting,
Yep.
that
Yeah.
that probably doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah, no, it used to be very much that all of the actors would be in the same room and they'd all have their own microphone and they'd be riffing off of each other and recording things like Walla, where you've got just kind of the general background noise. But yeah, nowadays it's very segmented. It's just you and maybe the director, and it's nice if you get an opportunity to actually play off of somebody, even if
Yeah.
even
I
if
wonder
it's just
I
another
wonder if
read.
people will start to realize there's something about that chemistry that maybe you wanna bring some of that back. Like, I
Right.
would think, like, a lot of times it's like musicians, like, I like, am I gonna use my DAW, or am I actually gonna use this Steinway piano,
Yeah.
right? Am I actually gonna go use, like, the sample, or am I actually gonna play the guitar,
Yeah.
right?
I think with all of this AI stuff that's we're on the kind of onset of that. I think there is going to be a sort of a resurgence of people going to live events and having live art and live
Yeah, 'cause I
acting
think
and all of
it'll
that
become
stuff.
like fast food. Like, there's a reason you go to the food truck,
Hmm.
right? There's a reason you go to that donut shop that's in a hole in the wall and don't go to the big chain,
Yeah.
because sometimes you want that handmade thing.
Hmm.
Sometimes you want that human peculiarity, that is different.
Yep.
It's all, it's all made out of flour and eggs and oil, but the
Hmm.
way this guy does it is not
Yeah.
the same the guy as this guy does it, right?
Yeah. You've got your cookie cutter thing that, okay, that's great every once in a while, or even if that's kind of a staple for you. But there's a reason why you seek out the other things, is to treat yourself, and it's not in the ordinary, and it's
Yeah,
unique. That's the coolest thing about live performances, is that it's never going to be the same again.
yeah, it's the craft.
Even if everybody tries to do it the same, it's not going to be the same. And if you miss out, you miss out. There was one show that we did at a community theater, Clue the musical, and if you've ever played the board game Clue, you know how it
Oh
works. You
yeah,
get to pick out a murderer and a weapon and a location, and we got to do that for every single night. And there was one of the cast members was never picked as the murderer, and it's crazy because we had to prepare, be prepared in case anybody was the murderer. But in order to get to that point, we all had to rehearse and get all of our lines memorized. And so that was one monologue nobody ever got to hear in a performance, just those of us that got to witness it in dress rehearsals.
yeah. Well, I think that's what I love about like live music,
Hmm.
especially like freeform jazz or experimental, music, experimental, like electronic music.
Yeah.
And I love, like, seeing these guys in Berlin,
Hmm.
in Netherlands and Norway, and they're just like riffing
Yep.
off of these Moogs and off of Euro racks, and it's kind of like fusion jazz. When if you ever saw Sun Ra, if you ever saw Miles Davis or Coltrane in their day,
Hmm.
when they were in the middle of it, you're like, yeah, there's something about that the AI is not going to ever replace that. The
Hmm.
AI is, it's like that. It's like, there's something about. I know there's a democratization of things, and these tools that give everybody can be an artist,
Yeah.
but there still are artists.
Yep.
you know?
Well, and that's the one thing that I don't, at least right now, there's not a lot of, especially, yeah, art or even the like voice clone things that they are out there right now. There's not a lot of them that know how to improvise. And even if they
Mhm.
do improvise, it's not going to be to the standards that I think a lot of people
Want,
want
yeah,
them to be.
yeah.
And that's a beautiful thing, because that means,
I think the human
element.
experience
Yep.
is always going to be there because there's nothing that like, you're the way like a method actor or a way of any actor takes what's inside of them, takes like what's around them, you know, and synthesizes it in the moment. It's like computers don't have a soul,
Right.
and they can try to mimic soul.
Mhm.
But being a, you know, if you want to play Delta Soul, you got to be from the Delta.
Mhm.
You know, if you're going to play Delta Blues, you got to be from the Delta. It's like, I don't think that machine doesn't know anything about the mud. It doesn't
Right.
know anything about the heartache. It doesn't know
Mhm.
anything about that. It can take it to the library and try to
Mhm.
figure out that it understands it, but it doesn't really get it.
Right.
It's not Led Billy. It's not Robert Johnson. It's not going to do it.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
that's the hope for the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, like, if people go to your website,
Mhm.
grantjohnsonvo.com, is
Yep.
that how they book you? And that's how they see your work? What happens if they connect with you there?
Yeah, if they connect with me through my website, I've got my contact information there. I've got my different social media accounts where they can check out, you know, either what's currently going on with me or what's, you know, some projects that I've put out or been collaborator on. Um, you can listen to some of the demos I've got. I've got my commercial demo up on the website. I've got my studio sample, which that's this, but without any kind of processing or editing.
Mhm.
And then I've got a contact form. If for some reason my email is not good enough for you, you can just always just stay right on the
Awesome.
page and just fill it out and let me know what you got. And hopefully we can collaborate.
Yeah, this is awesome. I love to give, you know, a forum for creatives to be out there, and that's why we have the URL of every guest, and that will be fully clickable.
Mhm.
Right now it's not, but like in the description on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, the
Sure.
podcast description, that is fully clickable. And we're on those platforms. So as soon as we're off there, that will be clickable. If you go in there, you can click right through to it. So
Cool.
I want everybody to realize that we do ask our audience to actually support the people who come on by doing that and checking out, do the further a little work there. Your
Mhm.
homework for tonight is if you're interested, go check it out. And I want to thank you for being a guest on the Fam Lecter Ghost podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Phantom.
Well, thank you. Well, have a great night.
You too.